Welcome to Currently, a weekly news roundup featuring conversations about some of the top local stories from the past 7 days from the journalists who are covering them. I'm your host, Crystal Frost. Now, this podcast was recorded at 5 p.m. on Thursday, April 10th, so things may change by the time you're watching or listening. Currently is made possible by underwriting from our generous lead supporter, Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings. They're located on South Garfield Avenue in Traverse City. Home fashion elevated. Now, support also comes from West Shore Bank. When you choose West Shore Bank, you're not just choosing a bank. You're choosing a partner committed to the well-being of our community. You can visit them today on 8th Street or at westshorebank.com. And from the Coin Slot Arcade Bar in Traverse City. It's a chill hangout boasting a full bar of 200-plus rotating cans, drafts, shooters, and pinball machines, all in a low-key setting. Now, joining me in the studio today, as always, head writer of the Traverse City Ticker, Ms. Beth Milligan.
Hello.
And we have a very special guest, co-founder and creative director of the Boardman Review, Nick Loud.
Hi.
Well, hi.
Thanks
How
for
are
having
you
me.
guys?
Good. We've talked about this, but I feel like we should let the listeners know that I have a little bit of vocal fry going on this week.
But you feel okay.
I feel okay. Just a little bit of laryngitis I'm getting over. And we were joking before the show. I told our friend Ed Godai-Pair that it sounded like Lauren Bacall went through a blender. So it's a little deep.
I think it sounds great.
Yeah.
I think you're doing
we'll just
fine.
roll with it today.
I think it sounds pretty good. And I have to say, if you have any sort of sultry reads you need to do, this is the time.
Yeah.
Get deep in the news. Let's do it.
Do a post-show recording.
I have a feeling that you lost your voice when you were, maybe getting angry about all the road construction projects that are headed here.
That's what a beautiful segue into one of the stories we're going to talk about this week.
And we are going to talk about that. I do want to remind everybody that the Ticker is a free multimedia daily news email and website, so you can subscribe at traverseticker.com. It goes directly to your inbox. You don't even have to look for it. The Boardman Review is a quarterly journal chronicling the creative and outdoor lifestyle of Northern Michigan, and I'm super excited to talk to both of you today.
Yes.
Yay, exciting. So we are going to move into the first couple of stories here. They have to do with roads and streets and safety. Oh my. We're going to start here. There's a new alliance in town.
Yes.
Not the Magicians Alliance.
Little bit different.
Actual streets alliance.
Yeah.
And the mission is to make Traverse City streets safer. So Beth, can you tell us a little more about this?
Sure. This is a story we had in the Ticker this week, the Grand Traverse Safe Streets Alliance. They made a presentation to Traverse City commissioners on Monday. This is a group that has multiple local nonprofits and advocacy groups that you probably have already heard of. So a lot of groups already working in town, like the TART Trails, Cherry Capital Cycling Club, Norte, Groundwork Center, Disability Network. A lot of great groups doing good work in town. But they've come together under this alliance essentially to try to advocate for ways to make our corridor safer for all users. That does include vehicles, but with a particular focus on cyclists, pedestrians, people with disabilities who are using wheelchairs or other mobility devices. In this presentation of the City Commission on Monday, they were talking about what they called quick hit projects, which are a list of projects that they thought could be done in Traverse City cheaply and effectively to make streets safer, not talking about, a huge redesign of a corridor or changing a signal, but just sometimes it's as simple as pavement markings or paint or adding a little bike lane in a certain section. So they talked about, as an example, like Franklin Street between 8th Street and the Boardman Lake Trail by Juniors there. Let people know that street. It's used all the time by cyclists because that's how you get on the Boardman Lake Loop if you're from downtown or 8th Street. But it doesn't have any designated place for bikes to go. There's a lot of traffic because the Juniors there. They have parking across. There's kind of cars going back and forth. There's side tracks there. So that was an example where they were like, we'll just put up some delineators, have some paint down, and just try having one lane on the side for the summer for cyclists just to give them a little protection. Sometimes these things are just visual cues to a driver to remind them, oh, yeah, there are people who are walking and biking here. Sometimes it's a physical barrier. So if someone's distracted driving, they could hit something and it wouldn't be the cyclist or pedestrian themselves, but something that gives them an alert, gets them back on the road. So they were just kind of outlining some of those ideas.
Yeah. How has the public, how are they responding to this? I like to go to the Ticker's Facebook page sometimes just to see how people are handling
humanity.
Things. Yes.
for better or worse sometimes.
So what are the people saying?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's interesting. I think there's maybe the conversation that happened in the thread illustrates potentially the need for this group, or some of the conversations this group could facilitate, because I think there's sometimes an adversarial relationship between cars and cyclists in many communities, not just Traverse City, but here. But if you're drivers, you'll often see drivers complain in the comment section that cyclists don't follow the rules of the road. They blow through stop signs. They're not paying attention. Why do we have to, why do they take up the whole road? Why do you have to slow down? You see that. And then, of course, cyclists are saying, we have a right to be on the road. We're in much greater peril than a car is. Right. As someone who's walking, typically the most vulnerable people on the road are going to be cyclists and pedestrians, not people who are in, 2 tons of steel. So I did see that reflected in the comment section. But what I, thought was interesting about this group, when I talked to Richard Robbins, who's a retiree, he moved to Traverse City last year, and he was the one who kind of helped spearhead this. He's an avid cyclist. He said, we're not an anti-auto group. He's like, I'm a driver. We're all drivers. We need to, especially in the winter here, many of us need to use cars to get around. He's like, we want the roads to be safer for everyone, including drivers. The goal is to be more collaborative. We're all using this infrastructure together. So how can we all use it more safely together?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, I'm all about safer streets.
Yeah.
You got to have street smarts.
Street smarts, as John Mulaney would say. Yes.
Absolutely.
I think it's a good idea to just find the things that are a little bit easier to work on, to fix, to approach, because I think a lot of people probably they're driving by or they're biking and they're wondering why hasn't this little detail, been taken care of? And so it's pretty cool to see that. I mean,
one of the things I love about journalism is I feel like even I've been doing it for on and off for 20 years, but I feel like I always still learn things, and I love that. And for example, in this story, one of the things I learned is, those bright white pavement markings that show you where you cross as a pedestrian. Seeing eye dogs also cue those to know when it's safe to take their handlers across roads. They often, that's part of the infrastructure they look at to say this is where we're supposed to cross. So when you have those pavement markings fade over time, it's not just dangerous because cars don't see, that's a pedestrian crossing and pedestrians aren't sure where they're supposed to go. But the seeing eye dogs also are losing that cue of where they're supposed to cross. So it's just things like that are interesting. The infrastructure makes a difference to a lot of different groups. And sometimes when you're not in a group, you don't think about how it affects another one. I thought that was an interesting thing I learned from that story.
Yeah, really well done. Something new that I learned from the story too. Thank you. We're going to kind of stay on the same theme here, and we are going to talk about the road construction mayhem. Now, there are several new road construction projects that are kicking off this month. This is in addition to the major project, the restructuring, resurface. It's like a whole rebuild of the M72, M22 corridor.
Yes.
It's going to get weird.
It's going to get weird. And so we kind of called this story your 2025 construction guide. M72 and M22, that got an early start. March is usually a little early for construction to start up here in northern Michigan, but that's a big project that's going to be going on all year, so they wanted to get a head start. The rest of them, though, are really going to be starting in the coming weeks. So if you go to the story at traverseticker.com, we have a link at the beginning. The first paragraph links to a bunch of neighborhood projects that are going to be happening in the city of Traverse City. So many of the numbered streets, I know Nick knows downtown well. Some of those will be under construction soon, but the bulk of the story is about the Grand Traverse County Road Commission. So the rest of the work that you're going to be seeing happening around our area roads happens under the Road Commission in Grand Traverse County. We talked about some of those projects. I think the most high profile one in the county is going to be 3 Mile Road, because we all often use 3 Mile if you're going out to the south side of town or east side of town between Hammond and South Airport. So that road's going to be completely reconstructed. They call that a crush and shape, which is where they essentially grind the road down even into its subbase, put a new subbase down, new asphalt on top. That's a over $2 million project, the Team Elmers. Now that corridor has 4 schools around it, around the 3 Mile Hammond intersection. So they're going to wait like literally the day after school gets out. They're like, all right, you're gone. We're starting. And then try to get it done before August, at the end of August when school starts back up. So they're really trying to sandwich it in there. If you use 3 Mile, though, you should know that that road is going to be closed for the summer. So if you are along 3 Mile, like the Conservancy, for example, we have a lot of friends at the Conservancy, you can still go to that property. Houses can still get in, but through traffic is going to be detoured around 4 Mile, Garfield, Hammond. So it'll be a big project.
And I mean, a lot of people already use that as sort of, to get away from the other traffic that's on the parkway, which was a problem last year too.
There's a lot of work happening out on that side. Town Line Road is another one. Town Line's one that people often complain about. We've done some surveys in the ticker, like what are the worst roads that you can, of in Traverse City. Some of them we didn't talk about in the story, like 14th and Frankie. Stay tuned. We will be talking about those soon.
That's like Mad Max over there. I mean, it's just nuts.
Apocalyptic. In this story, though, we were more focused on the county ones, but Town Line's another one that's really, been breaking down over time. I think the thing that's helpful for people to know is we have these different road designations. So we have these things called local roads. Local roads require a match. So like, let's say the county road commission is going to tackle a local road like Town Line Road. They're only allowed to pay 50% of the project cost for that. The other 50% has to come from the local municipality. So it has to come from East Bay Township, Garfield Township, whatever that might be. So when you see certain roads get really down into bad repair, it's usually not because the road commission isn't aware of that or your local mayor or whoever isn't aware of it. It's a funding issue. And that's the case with Town Line. They tried to talk to the airport. They tried to talk to the townships to get that funding match to completely reconstruct that road. It didn't come together this year. So they're going to be doing a Band-Aid fix on Town Line. It'll just be basically like a chip and seal to get it through the next couple of years and then try to circle back to it. And sometimes that's what happens with roads.
I had no idea that they weren't actually allowed to fund more than 50%
on certain roads on what are called local roads. Yeah.
See, you learn things. Look at this.
Don't lose your voice by yelling at the road.
Yeah, no, just keep cool. You don't want to end up like me.
Right. Exactly. Oh my gosh, wonderful stuff here. Now, coming up, we are going to learn all about the Boardman Review, and we're going to highlight a story or two from the spring issue. But first, how about a word for our lead underwriter here, Golden-Fowler. Now, when I was growing up, I visited my great-grandma quite a bit, and one of the things I remember is how truly uncomfortable the furniture was. And it wasn't because the furniture itself was uncomfortable. That wasn't the problem. It was because it was all coated with this heavy plastic. You guys have this?
Are you talking like actually plastic sheets?
No, like a plastic that was just affixed to the actual furniture. I mean, I can feel it right now, like sticking to the back of my thighs.
I feel like you can hear it.
You can hear it.
Yeah.
Like, it's that weird noise. Now, that's what would happen when I got up. My great-grandma didn't have air conditioning either, so you can kind of imagine how difficult that would be. Summertime plus shorts plus plastic-covered furniture equals ouch. Let's just put it that way. And, I understood and I understand now that she just wanted to keep it nice, keep it clean and pristine, right? She wanted to make sure that it lasted. But your living room, that furniture should be able to handle the way that you live, hence the name living room, right? That's where Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings comes in. They carry Smith Brothers furniture, which is the best of the best. And let me tell you, that furniture can handle the way you live. Now imagine this. Your dog, maybe it's huge, sleeping quietly on his favorite chair. No problem. Your teenager just plopped down with his feet on the couch. Go for it. How about your grandkids just jumping up and down? That happens. Bring it on, because when you have quality furniture, you can allow this kind of behavior. You can allow this kind of living in your living room. Smith Brothers furniture will always rise to the occasion, bringing together the perfect blend of durability and longevity with the long-lasting comfort that you so desire in furniture. So if you're in the market for new living room furniture, put away the plastic start living, get over to Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings on Garfield Avenue in Traverse City. They carry the full line of Smith Brothers furnishings. Now, that is straight coming from Bern, Indiana. Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings, home fashion elevated. All right, and welcome back to Currently. Now, we are going to get directly into the background and origin story of our guest in studio, Nick Loud. You and your brother started the Boardman Review. Look at that. Look at how easy that was. What?
Yeah,
I did
it. Practice makes perfect.
I did practice that quite a bit. The Boardman Review, and, Beth, you've been a huge fan of this publication.
Yes.
8 years this has been going on.
Yeah, this summer.
I thought this was issue number 25. It's issue number 30.
Yeah, issue 30. So we started in 2017, and we'll be 8 years this summer.
8 years.
Yeah, and basically I grew up spending a lot of time in this area, fell in love with this area, with the people, with kind of that entrepreneurial spirit, the outdoor kind of, lifestyle. Yeah. Getting out on the trails, out on the water, and those experiencing the small towns and kind of the makeup of, what it means to live and work here. And, had that experience and then unfortunately left, went to college and kind of had to pursue my career. And I was in Los Angeles for several years. And through that kind of, as you are away from home, you start to miss it. And thinking about being there and about the people and about some of the stories and kind of just the interesting characters that you encounter, in this community, and like how can you represent that in a way? And I was living out there working in film, mainly on documentaries, and so I was very much in that like story mindset. And also thinking about media, multimedia. Around that time, there was a kind of an indie print boom in a way. There was a lot more indie publications that were coming out that were kind of featuring an interesting mix of kind of that high quality indie print, but also some of the like multimedia aspects, whether those are podcasts or photography, music, video. And so that kind of sparked an idea of how to bottle this whole kind of mentality. And so I just started doing a lot of research and saving stories here and there about, things in other regions, but also like, small businesses and people that are here. And I kind of kept this like ongoing Google Doc basically for years and kept putting, things in there. I did a lot of research on, print because it was a little bit foreign to me being in kind of the world of video production. Getting into print production was a lot different. And there was definitely a learning curve for kind of like how it kind of comes about, the timeline, the production schedule, options for paper stock, very exciting things. But the things that I found really interesting and really, fulfilling in a creative way. And so kind of through that experience, had conversations with my brother, Chris, and was like, I really want to get this going. And during those years kind of leading up, I was, thinking about moving back to Michigan, and, kind of really diving into something that felt like our own project and like something that would connect us to the community in a meaningful way. And so it was basically over the winter of like 2016 into early 2017, we were talking about this and it kind of felt like a now or never moment of like, all right, we got to go for this. And so we had our first issue, I think it was released in July of 2017.
So where was Chris at this time?
Chris was in LA most of the time. Yeah. So we were both out there and we were trying to experience Michigan as best we could. We would have our Oberons and we'd watch the Lions games in the morning. In the morning. Yeah. We'd go to the bar at like, what was it, like 10 a.m. for like for a Lions game. But yeah, I think we were both, kind of craving home in a way. And and then he actually ended up moving back here a year before I did.
Okay.
And then I did like a year of travel, and kind of through that experience, had extra kind of devoted time to work on this.
Yeah.
And then we were both here at the same time. We're like, all right, let's do it.
It's time to do that. I mean, first of all, I love that you and your brother get along well enough to put together publication.
Get along well. They're often mistaken for each other. It's funny because Nick and Chris are and their families are very dear friends. We know each other for several years now, but so I know them apart well. But people who don't often confuse them. They do look similar, but not if you're friends.
Well,
you see
we're 5 years apart, so
yeah.
And I'm the younger one, so I'm not sure whether to be complimented or
And I
Chris more like should be complimented. Yeah.
I was going to say that.
Yeah.
Beth and her sister
We're 4 years
are
apart.
4 years apart, but they're constantly mistaken for each
twins. Yeah. So anyway,
it happens. Well, and we have a lot of kind of like shared, lingo and in the way that we kind of phrase things, and so it tends to happen for sure.
Well, I mean, that's a good thing. First of all, like sometimes those, I feel like sometimes when you get into these creative projects that become business projects. I mean, and if sometimes when it's family, it can get a little murky. It seems like you guys really figured it out.
I mean, it's tough still. But I think having a thought partner in it is invaluable and is something where, we have to bounce ideas off of each other. And work through things, and especially in something in this world where we're familiar with like how to put together the content and the story, but not really the medium. And so there was a lot of like, working together through that.
I mean, these stories are really beautiful, and I think I have a question of, you were mentioning when you were in LA that you were sort of putting stories aside and like, journaling them for later or just hiding them. Someday I'm going to tell this story. Where do you find these stories? I mean, these are really at times quite personal stories for people, whether it's their business or it's something, their family, whatever that is. How are you finding these stories?
Yeah. Well, one, I think we're just incredibly lucky to begin with to be able to feature these type of stories. And one thing about it that is a little bit different than other publications, that most of our stories are written by the subjects themselves. So that offers an opportunity to kind of like tell their own story, to kind of dive a little deeper into maybe their philosophy behind starting a business or, moving back here or something like that. And I think that's a challenge for a lot of people because all these people are not writers themselves. And so we have to kind of coach them through that process. But I also think they're excited to have that chance to really kind of get into, what makes them tick in a way. To start, definitely like our first year, we had to really talk about, all right, there's this thing that we're working on, and like
you had to really sell it.
Please trust us. We had to sell it in a way that, it took a lot of conversations, and we were very proactive about kind of like reaching out. And so that document that I had going of this kind of long list, there was a lot of kind of early conversations that came from that.
Nice.
And then over the years, it became, still that, but also people would reach out to us, whether that's like a submission for a short story or poetry or just like a profile. And I would say probably predominantly now it's a lot of just recommendations and people kind of bringing it up in a way that like, hey, like I know this other like really cool person or who's doing something interesting, or they'll talk to that person and they reach out to us and be like, hey, I heard from somebody, and now it's a lot of collaboration in that way, and our cover story came through that method where Beth Price, who's a photographer, had worked with us on a couple of previous stories. And her photography actually has been featured on a previous cover before. And she came to us with this story because she had shot some things with this family who had a goat farm in Cedar, and she came to us and was like, I just had this amazing experience. There's this great farm. Their farming practices are really interesting. I think they would be a good story. And but we had to find a writer, and so that was that kind of like third piece to that feature. So we got to meet Matt Dursum, who came on as the writer we hadn't worked with before. And so, kind of through this process, we got to meet an incredible family who have a farm and learned about a new writer.
I love this cover.
Yeah.
I love it.
The photo is so great. It's amazing.
Beth Price, amazing photographer.
Yeah.
But we can just go right into the story because I love it. It combines two of my favorite things, which are goats and family farms. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
Goats are my favorite.
Where can you go wrong with that?
It's great. And the name of the farm is The Land of Milk and Honey. The duo, the couple that started this farm, I mean, you wouldn't necessarily think that two people who were living in Chicago, who ended up in Michigan in the first place, they had very stressful jobs. You're talking about, a nurse and a firefighter. I mean, these are stressful jobs. And then to add to it, to build, this farm, this goat farm, where they're going to sell like soap and they have kids and like all these things. I mean, that story was just so inspiring. Can you tell us just a little more about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really highlights, I would say a lot of the stories actually that we feature are kind of about people who, either used to live here, moved away, came back, or have moved here for a very specific reason. And those reasons are different with every person. But there's a lot of common themes with it. And so I think for this type of story, this family, Stephanie and Chris, were looking for a change, lifestyle change. And I think, for them to seek out this area, it says one thing, but then they chose to, start a goat farm, which is another adventure for them. And it all came about during around the time of the pandemic. And so within the story, there's kind of some parts about how they dealt with it and what the farm meant to them
and to their family. And I think it's really important to remember that for a lot of people during the pandemic, you might be on TikTok and learning how to make bread.
Right.
But for Stephanie and Chris Como, they were in the thick of it. I mean, they were, firefighter, EMT, and nurse. I mean, you're talking about really, really high stress stuff. And Matt writes in here that the farm actually became like a sanctuary for them, where they didn't have to worry about the outside world. And that was just, I mean, I get goosebumps thinking about that. Like that. Goats, farm, cheese, soap, that becomes your sanctuary. I love that.
And the idea that like the farm will continue no matter what.
Yeah.
Really with those things that are happening on the outside with their day-to-day jobs, things are kind of fluctuating with the times, but the goats are still going to have their, I don't know the right term, but they're babies in the spring, and like they're, that's going to happen no matter what.
Like life cycle continues, and I think that's interesting too. Anytime the outside world feels overwhelming, I find this with myself whenever I feel like a little overwhelmed by whatever might be happening in the in the news or in the greater outside world. I just remember, what can I control? And when you're on a farm, it's like, yeah, you got to get out there and you have to feed the animals, and that's what you can do, And so maybe there is a sense of empowerment in this world where you feel chaos,
Yeah.
I mean, as an OG Boardman Review fan from the beginning, I think two things I have to, plug at the end of the show for the Boardman Review is, one, they always have a nonprofit partner with a publication, right, Nick? So there's always a portion of the proceeds that are going back to different nonprofits, which is just a really great way. Is it Housing North?
Yeah, Housing North.
This
issue. Yeah.
And the other thing I want to plug in the future feature. And if you guys go to the boardmanreview.com, you can subscribe and get the issues. But also, the guys always host a launch party for the issues. We plugged it on the show last week. This issue was, of course, was this past Sunday at the Little Fleet, and I went to it. I try to go whenever I can. Those events are so great, and actually, they're one of the things that I tell like new people when they come to town if they're like trying to meet people. I always say like go to a Boardman Review launch party because there's just such a cool, creative, warm, supportive, artistic community there. I always meet interesting new people, and I feel like I know everyone in Traverse City, but I always meet new people at Boardman and parties, and they usually have people reading their contributions from the articles. There's sometimes video clips. Cone Furnishings, who's featured in this episode this week, had there's beautiful woodworked kitchen utensils and furniture up at the Little Fleet to look at. It was just really cool. So I highly recommend checking out those launch parties if you ever go to one.
Absolutely. I know we don't have a lot of time to cover that story about Cone Furnishings. So again, I would recommend that you pick up the Boardman Review so you can read all about it. It's just such an interesting story about how a couple turned, their love of DIY and woodworking into, really a way to reduce waste, from a lot of these city trees and these local trees that end up in wood chippers. It's a wonderful story. I also want to ask you before we move on to, the goodbyes and the pinball, why, you are really dedicated to the print. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. You're talking about paper selection. This is weighty. It's weighty. It's a good paper. It's beautiful.
It took some time to hone it in.
You told me that you did once have it digitally, and you went back to sort of the print roots. Can you just explain that a little?
Yeah, I think when we started, I knew a little bit more about like how to create something that would be more in that digital format. And I really like the idea of like you would hyperlink something or maybe like embed a video. And then we came out with the print version kind of at the same time as that. And the reaction to the print was just far and away. We were hoping that people would like it, but the reaction to the print version specifically was definitely pretty enthusiastic and something where we're like, okay, we should focus more on that. I think it felt a little bit more unique in a way of being able to have this print version along with the release parties and having kind of that live storytelling, and then you can take a print version away with you. Kind of had that a little bit more of a connection in a way. And we've done some different things for like digital, like podcasts and our newsletter and things like that we can still kind of showcase those stories. But we really wanted to get into the print version and kind of make that our calling card.
I remember I grew up in a National Geographic household, and you didn't throw those away. They became part of, like they were put on a bookshelf and you could pull them out at any point. And this has a real National Geographic vibe. Like it really does.
It's nice. We have them like in our guest room, and like people love to read them, like Airbnbs. I know stock them and stuff. They look really nice. They're nice to read about the region.
And the stories themselves are pretty timeless. It's not like there's, you can pick one up from 8 years ago and it's still going to have value.
Yeah, I think thank you, both of you. I'm paying you too. These things. But yeah, I think a big goal of ours is to have it feel timeless. And even though this is our spring issue, we don't want it to feel like, as soon as summer hits, that these stories are now, time-stamped in some way. And I do think as we get a little bit closer to our 10-year anniversary, I want to really start to dig out some of those older stories because I think a lot of people would be still interested in them now. Yeah. And so I think that's hopefully, what comes across is that, your story is being presented in something that will hopefully have a pretty nice life to it.
And because it's print, it's available around town, right? North Horizon Books?
Horizon. Yeah, right downtown here in Traverse City. Horizon, Brilliant, Outpost, all have them. And then we're in places throughout Leelanau County, Benzie, and Antrim.
Yeah, and you can find, I mean, if you go to the boardmanreview.com, there is a little section called stockists, and you can find exactly like if you happen to be in Empire, you're going to go find it at Grocer's Daughter, or if you're in Elk Rapids, it's at Ethnology. I mean, so it's all over. Opportunity for you to pick this up. It's definitely worth it. It's and it is something that you're going to hold on to. So I want to say thank you so much for joining us. Before we go, what we like to do at the end of the show is to talk about maybe something you're excited about that you're going to do this week. And Beth, I know there's a lot going on with Comedy Festival this weekend.
Oh, and I know we plugged it on the show, but yes, it's the last hurrah. It starts today. Gosh, listen to my voice.
Sounds great.
I'm so excited if you couldn't tell. So yes, today the day that we're filming. Thursday is the first day of the festival. When this airs tomorrow, Friday, it'll be the second day. So if you're seeing this tomorrow, there's still shows going on Friday and Saturday. Jay Farrow and Natasha Leggero at the Park Place tonight, and Mark Maron, of course, at the Opera House on Saturday. All the encore shows moved to Workshop, just to give that little plug, but there's so many great things happening. And I've seen Nick out and about at some of the shows occasionally too. So
one thing I want to just remind people of for those interested in maybe checking out some other things of the festival, the comedy karaoke is legit. It's so much fun
thing to happen in Traverse City.
It is. You have comedians who are like singing songs. It's so fun.
And you get headliners dropping in. Yeah. And it's just like, it's an interactive audience. It's not someone like singing off key on stage. It's someone like belting and getting the crowd involved and putting people on their shoulders. And it's just like, it's Friday and Saturday nights at the end of the night at the Workshop. And all the festival information's at Traverse City Comedy Fest.
I do think the idea of the mixing of like these talents that you're bringing in, but also then local talents.
Yeah.
And maybe just people who are trying it for the first time. It's pretty cool to see that in Traverse City. I think some people lament that we don't get, the big names, but Comedy Festival, I mean, it's pretty amazing. So
absolutely,
it's pretty exciting.
Nick, is there anything you're looking forward to in the coming week?
Yeah. Well, next week I'm actually not going to be here. I'm going somewhere south, going to Charleston for a week. But actually, the week after that, I serve on the board of the Leelanau Conservancy, and they're having their Earth Week. Okay. So they'll be having some events all that week. So if you check out the Leelanau Conservancy website, they have a list of all their events. And there's some kind of variety between hikes and happy hours. They're going to be part of the Pines North Trivia Night.
Oh, fun! With our friends at IPR.
Yeah. So it's a lot of like fun events.
That's great. I am doing all the comedy festival stuff, but I also have to take time tomorrow. I'm going to go back to my hometown of Benzonia. Tomorrow morning, I'm doing a needle art felting class with a group called 3 States Fiber Art. I've wanted to learn felting for a long time. I don't know how you felt about that.
I felt great. I'll go on that journey with you.
I have to tell you that the description that really caught my attention is that they call it fun and slightly dangerous.
Oh.
Which I was like, okay, sounds right up my alley.
Yeah.
So if you want to find out more about that too, it's tomorrow morning. There's still slots available. 3statesfiberart.com. It's happening in Benzonia. Now, I want to say thank you to Beth and Nick for yet another wonderful show. We're going to be back next Friday with WTCM's Michelle Perez. And Michelle is going to update us on her continuing coverage of the major ice storms that occurred in Emmett, Otsego, Charlevoix, and Sheboygan. She's been really doing a great job of just covering all of the shocking damage that has been happening. People are still without power. It's kind of unbelievable right now. Just a reminder to subscribe to our show. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can pick it up, or easy peasy, go to crystalfrost.com and you can subscribe everything right there, like YouTube and Facebook and all the podcast channels right there.
It's all in one spot.
It's all in one spot. Love that. We are going to play some pinball coming up next, so thank you to that. And I also want to say currently is a Compass Local podcast. It's produced by Pancake Boy Productions. Big thanks to our lead supporter, Golden-Fowler Home Furnishings, in addition to the wonderful West Shore Bank and the Coin Slot. I have to say I bought both of you a caramel from Mary's Kitchen Port.
Perfect.
It's R.I.P.
Not yet. You have until August, and then Mary's is closing up.
I'm making the most of it until this.
Save this until August. Yeah.
Put this in a glass case, but I'm going to eat it because it's too good.
All right. Let's get the ball rolling on some pinball, shall we? All right, in the spirit of the Traverse City Comedy Festival, I have one free play question for you. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Who is your favorite comedian?
I have many, but I just saw them together this weekend, Tina Fey and Amy Poehler. I saw them at the Fox in Detroit, and it was incredible. Life changed.
I just watched SNL and I saw Jack Black on there and he just crushed it. And I think about School of Rock and yeah, he's got a soft spot.
Tina and Amy said Jack Black is the one person who's never been a cast member that they thought should be. They loved him.
Cool.
So
Wow.
there you go.
He did an amazing job.
I love that. My favorite comedian is John Mulaney. I know I'm kind of boring with that, but
Love it.
I love him. And you know what? He's won us back.
Yeah.
He has.